Retirement is one of the strangest journeys we ever take. Not because it happens suddenly. In fact, it's usually the opposite. Retirement is something we're preparing for every day, often without realizing it. Every paycheck, every savings decision, every debt we take on, every financial habit we build is quietly helping shape what that future looks like. I often think about retirement like a very long flight, not a quick trip, not one of those little one-hour flights where if the seat is uncomfortable, you just tough it out until landing. I'm talking about a 30-year journey, a flight so long that where you're sitting matters enormously. And here's the fascinating part. Most people think they choose their retirement seat when they stop working. They don't. The truth is they chose it years earlier, sometimes decades earlier. Every financial decision was another click on the reservation screen. Every savings contribution was another mile earned. Every debt payment was another step toward a better seat assignment. By the time retirement arrives, many of us discover that the boarding pass has already been printed. Some retirees walk onto that plane and find themselves sitting in first class. The seats are spacious. They can travel when they want. They sleep well at night. They rarely worry about unexpected expenses. Money isn't the center of every conversation anymore. It's simply a tool helping them enjoy life. Others settle into the main cabin, comfortable, not extravagant, not wealthy, but secure. The bills get paid. The grandchildren get birthday gifts. The occasional vacation happens. The refrigerator breaks, and it's annoying rather than catastrophic. Life feels manageable. And then there are those sitting in the very back rows. Every expense creates anxiety. Every medical bill causes stress. Every increase in grocery prices feels personal. Retirement becomes less about freedom and more about survival. Today, I want to talk honestly about these three financial classes of retirement in 2026. Not to judge anyone, not to shame anyone, but because understanding where you are is the first step toward improving where you're headed. And perhaps the most surprising truth of all, the difference between these cabins often has very little to do with intelligence, talent, or even income. It's usually the result of small, consistent financial decisions repeated over long periods of time. Let's start in the back of the plane, because that's where many retirement stories begin. Meet Dwayne. Dwayne is 68 years old. He's worked almost continuously since he was a teenager. Construction work, warehouse jobs, delivery driving, physical work that demanded long hours and sore muscles, the kind of work that keeps society running. Dwayne isn't lazy. He isn't irresponsible. In fact, he's exactly the opposite. He's dependable. He showed up. He worked hard. He raised a family. He paid bills. He did everything people told him responsible adults were supposed to do. But life happened. A transmission failed. A roof leaked. A child needed help. Medical bills appeared. Inflation climbed. And somehow, every time he got slightly ahead financially, something pulled him back. If that story sounds familiar, it's because millions of Americans have lived some version of it. Today, Dwayne's retirement income comes primarily from Social Security. And while Social Security is an incredibly important safety net, it was never designed to be someone's entire retirement strategy. That's where many retirees find themselves struggling. When most of your income comes from one source, every unexpected expense becomes a threat. Imagine trying to build a stable house on a single support beam. That's difficult. Now imagine trying to maintain that house for 30 years. That's retirement for many Americans. The challenge isn't just income, it's uncertainty. Groceries cost more than they used to. Utilities cost more. Insurance costs more. Medical care costs more. And unfortunately, aging often means needing more health care at exactly the time your earning power has disappeared. That's why financial stress can become one of the defining experiences of retirement for so many people. But here's something important. I refuse to tell this story as though Dwayne failed, because he didn't. Far too many retirement conversations turn into blame sessions. Someone points at struggling retirees and says, they should have saved more. Maybe, but life is rarely that simple. Many people were raising children while paying medical bills. Many lost jobs during recessions. Many supported aging parents. Many never had access to pensions. Many worked for employers that offered little retirement guidance. For decades, companies shifted more and more retirement responsibility onto individuals. The pension disappeared. The 401k arrived. And suddenly, millions of people were expected to become investment managers without any meaningful financial education. That's a huge burden. So if you see yourself in Dwayne's story, please hear this clearly. This isn't about blame. It's about awareness. The goal isn't to criticize where you are. The goal is to improve where you're going. Because even if retirement is approaching, there are still choices available. There are still ways to strengthen your financial position. There are still opportunities to build additional income streams. And that brings us to the second cabin, the place most people should be aiming for, the comfortable retiree. Let's meet Linda. Linda retired from nursing, not as a millionaire, not as a celebrity, not after selling a company for hundreds of millions of dollars. Just a hard-working professional who consistently made smart decisions over time. Linda contributed to her retirement accounts. Not perfectly, not every year, but consistently. She paid down debt. She avoided major financial disasters. And perhaps most importantly, she entered retirement with manageable expenses. That's a phrase that doesn't sound exciting. Manageable expenses. Yet it might be one of the most powerful concepts in personal finance. Because retirement isn't just about how much money comes in, it's about how much money goes out. I've seen people with surprisingly modest retirement savings live wonderfully comfortable retirements. I've also seen people with large portfolios feel constant financial stress. The difference wasn't always income. The difference was often spending. Linda owns her home outright. That changes everything. No monthly mortgage payment, no giant housing burden hanging over every budget decision. That alone creates breathing room. And breathing room creates options. Linda receives Social Security. She has retirement savings, maybe a small pension, maybe investment income, maybe part-time consulting work she actually enjoys. The key isn't that any one source is enormous. The key is that multiple sources work together. That's what financial resilience looks like. If one income source fluctuates, another continues. If the market drops temporarily, Social Security keeps arriving. If unexpected expenses appear, there's flexibility. And flexibility is incredibly valuable in retirement. What does Linda's life look like? She's not shopping for private jets. She's not buying islands. But she's enjoying her life. She takes trips. She visits family. She participates in hobbies. She says yes to experiences without immediately calculating financial consequences. That freedom matters because ultimately, retirement isn't about maximizing wealth, it's about maximizing life. Too many people spend decades focusing only on account balances, yet money is simply a tool. Its purpose is creating security, opportunity, and peace of mind. Linda understands that. She doesn't need endless wealth to feel successful. She simply needs enough. Enough income, enough savings, enough flexibility, enough confidence. And that's a powerful place to be. In fact, one of the biggest misconceptions about retirement is the belief that you must become wealthy to retire comfortably. You don't. You need a sustainable system. That's different. A sustainable system combines income, savings, manageable expenses, healthcare planning, and financial discipline. When those pieces work together, retirement becomes far more enjoyable than most people imagine. Now, let's walk toward the front of the plane, past the curtain, past the larger seats, past the people pretending not to notice everyone looking at them. Let's talk about the rich retiree. Let's talk about Carol. Carol's retirement looks very different from Dwayne's and even different from Linda's. At first glance, people assume the difference is simply money. And yes, money plays a role. But there is something deeper happening here. Carol reached retirement with substantial assets, a large 401k, a healthy brokerage account, some real estate investments, perhaps ownership in a business she helped build. The result is that her investments now generate meaningful income on their own. That's an important distinction. When you're working, your job produces income. When you're retired, ideally, your assets produce income. The wealthy retiree has crossed that bridge successfully. Money works while they sleep. Money works while they travel. Money works while they spend time with grandchildren. Money continues generating opportunities without requiring daily labor. And that's what financial independence truly means. Not luxury, not designer handbags, not expensive watches. Independence, the ability to choose. That's the real definition of wealth. Carol can choose whether she wants to travel. She can choose whether she wants to volunteer. She can choose whether she wants to work part-time. The key word is choose. Financial stress removes choices. Financial security creates them. That's why wealthy retirees often seem calmer. It's not because they never face challenges, it's because money is no longer the source of those challenges. Now here's something fascinating. Many wealthy retirees don't actually spend dramatically more than comfortable retirees. That surprises people. We imagine wealthy retirees constantly buying extravagant things. Sometimes they do, but often they don't. The habits that created wealth tend to stick around. People who spent decades saving and investing don't suddenly become reckless consumers. In fact, many continue living surprisingly modest lives. They drive reasonable cars. They live in homes they've owned for years. They still compare prices. They still think carefully about purchases. Because wealth isn't usually created by spending. It's created by consistently keeping part of what you earn. That's a lesson worth remembering. Another major difference is how wealthy retirees experience market downturns. When markets fall, many retirees panic. Headlines become frightening. Television experts predict disaster. Investors start imagining worst-case scenarios. But wealthy retirees often have something incredibly valuable: time and cash reserves. They aren't forced to sell investments during bad markets. They have flexibility. They can wait. That's important because panic often destroys wealth far faster than market declines themselves. History repeatedly shows that markets recover. The challenge is staying invested long enough to benefit from that recovery. Wealthy retirees have structured their finances so they can remain patient. Patience becomes a financial advantage. And perhaps most importantly, wealthy retirees eventually stop asking one question and start asking another. Early in life, the question is, will I have enough? Later, the question becomes, what should I do with what I have? That's an entirely different conversation. Estate planning becomes important. Charitable giving becomes important. Helping family members becomes important. Tax planning becomes important. Legacy becomes important. The focus shifts from accumulation to impact. That's where many wealthy retirees find their greatest fulfillment. Not in acquiring more, but in using what they've built to make a difference. Now, before anyone watching decides they need millions of dollars to feel secure, let's pause, because that's not the lesson here. The lesson is not that everyone needs first-class retirement. The lesson is that everyone deserves a retirement with dignity, security, and options. For most people, the goal should be comfort, not extravagance, not perfection, comfort. A retirement where bills are paid, healthcare is manageable, emergencies don't become disasters, and life remains enjoyable. That goal is far more achievable than many people realize. So let's talk about how to move toward it, because knowing where you stand is useful, but improving your situation is even more important. The first strategy is simple: build a second source of retirement income. This may be the single biggest divider between financial struggle and financial comfort. Social Security is valuable, but relying on it alone creates risk. Think about every successful business you've ever seen. Most have multiple revenue streams. Why? Because dependence creates vulnerability. Retirement works the same way. You want multiple sources supporting your future. That second source might be a 401k. It might be an IRA. It might be rental income. It might be dividend-paying investments. It might be a pension. It might even be part-time work you genuinely enjoy. The exact source matters less than the principle. Never rely on a single engine to power a 30-year journey. The second strategy is reducing major expenses before retirement. This is where housing enters the conversation. Housing is often the largest expense retirees face. And unlike many expenses, housing costs can sometimes be addressed years before retirement begins. Every additional mortgage payment made today can create freedom tomorrow. Every debt eliminated creates future flexibility. A paid-off home doesn't solve every problem, but it removes one of the biggest financial burdens most households carry. Imagine entering retirement without a monthly mortgage payment. Imagine keeping that money available for healthcare, travel, hobbies, family, or simply peace of mind. That's powerful. The third strategy is resisting lifestyle inflation. This one is sneaky because lifestyle inflation rarely feels dangerous. It feels deserved. You receive a raise, you upgrade the car, you move to a bigger house, you take on new monthly payments. Everything seems reasonable. Individually, these decisions often are reasonable. The problem is cumulative. Each upgrade becomes permanent. Each expense becomes another obligation. Each financial commitment follows you into retirement planning. Before long, higher income hasn't created greater security. It's simply created higher expenses. This happens to people across every income level. I've seen six-figure earners struggle financially because spending expanded faster than saving. And I've seen moderate earners build remarkable financial security because they consistently invested the difference. Income matters, but behavior matters more. That's one of the most important lessons in personal finance. The fourth strategy is staying invested through uncertainty. This sounds easy. It's not. When markets decline, emotions become loud. Fear becomes persuasive. Every instinct says, do something. But successful investors understand something important. Volatility is normal. Economic headlines come and go. Recessions come and go. Political cycles come and go. Markets experience setbacks. Then they recover. Then they grow. Then they face another setback. The pattern repeats. The investors who succeed aren't necessarily the smartest. They're often the most disciplined. They stay focused on long-term goals instead of short-term noise. That discipline compounds over decades. And compounding is one of the most extraordinary forces in finance. Small decisions repeated consistently produce remarkable outcomes. Not overnight, not next month, but over 20 or 30 years. That's where real transformation happens. Now, I want to address one final myth because it influences how many people think about retirement. The myth is that retirement success belongs primarily to high earners. That belief sounds logical. After all, earning more money should make retirement easier. And sometimes it does, but not always. I've watched people earn extraordinary incomes and arrive at retirement completely unprepared. I've watched physicians, executives, and business owners spend nearly everything they earned. At the same time, I've seen teachers, nurses, engineers, and small business employees build impressive retirement security through consistency. Why? Because retirement isn't determined solely by income. It's determined by the relationship between income and behavior. It's determined by what you save, what you invest, what you owe, what habits you build, what choices you repeat. A person earning a moderate income who saves steadily for 30 years can achieve tremendous financial security. A person earning 3 times as much while saving very little may struggle. The math isn't glamorous, but it's powerful. And honestly, I find that encouraging. Because while we can't always control what we earn, we often have significant influence over what we do with what we earn. That means your future isn't entirely determined by your current circumstances. Your future is still being written. Every contribution matters. Every debt payment matters. Every smart decision matters. Every year matters. Think again about that retirement flight. Most people imagine the seat assignment happens on departure day, but that's not true. The seed assignment is happening right now, today. With the decisions you're making this week, with the money you're saving this month, with the habits you're building this year, the future version of you is quietly watching. The 65-year-old version, the 75-year-old version, the 85-year-old version. They're counting on the choices you're making today. Not perfection, just progress. Not massive sacrifices, just consistency. And here's the beautiful part. You don't need to become rich to build a wonderful retirement. You don't need to win the lottery. You don't need a perfect career. You don't need flawless timing. You simply need a plan. A commitment to saving, a willingness to stay disciplined, and enough patience to let time do what time does best. Because retirement isn't built in one dramatic moment. It's built in thousands of ordinary moments. One contribution, one decision, 1 year at a time. So before you move on, ask yourself a simple question. Which cabin are you currently heading toward? Not the cabin you hope for, not the cabin you wish for, the cabin your current habits are actually reserving. And if you don't like the answer, that's okay, because the flight hasn't left yet. You still have time to upgrade. You still have time to change course. You still have time to build something better. The most important retirement decision isn't the one you made 10 years ago. It's the one you make next. Your future self is counting on it. And trust me, one day they'll thank you for every smart choice you made.